Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be doing another update. The previous video, it had a little bit of a hiccup with the speaker system, so it's working now. So please support my work by making sure that you share my videos and you subscribe to my channels. I have 3 YouTube channels. Links are in the description. I also have Brighteon, BitChute, and Rumble. Links are in the description of this video, below the video, right? And click that notification button. Make sure you're following me on all 6 channels. Share my work. I am heavily censored on YouTube on certain topics that I say, especially that are related to the crisis that we just went through and the post era part of that crisis. All right. So, pay attention. The ones that have been following me since, 2020 or even earlier, you follow my lead, you'll be okay. If you don't follow my lead, you're just a dumbass. So, all right, let's start where we left off on the previous video because of the speaker problem. This is the reason why you should be donating my PNN, because we're PNN is a really professional news network.
Tell us anything more about that. Well, the general mood
here is also for no ceasefire, and Mr. Netanyahu has made that extremely clear. There's talk of there being a temporary truce or a humanitarian pause. Is really only talk at the moment. There have been demands from Arab leaders for this, but until all hostages are returned, this is not going to be on the table as far as Mr. Netanyahu goes.
In an interview with the U.S. news network ABC, Netanyahu made significant comments about Gaza. Let's listen in.
Those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas, it certainly is not. I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine.
Ben Netanyahu there saying the country.
That is the reason why I keep on saying that it's going to turn into a police state, and the technology that's coming right out of Tel Aviv is going to be ushering in 1984. And oh, by the way, for them to gain revenue, they're going to sell it to municipalities in the United States. And we're going to be, because of the whole digital currency and the BioPatriot Act, that I've been talking about for 4 years now. You're going to have this social scoring, right? And, if you are a dissident, if the ruling party doesn't like what you're saying, they're going to take away your job. They're going to take away your health care. They're going to take away your ability to transact through the banking system. So, the problem is that there are multiple dimensions to this issue. It's not just a Palestinian-Israeli issue. It's not just the Temple Mount building being rebuilt, which it will be rebuilt. It's not just Israel going back to the temple and biblical boundaries, right? But there is this ushering in of a surveillance state, because mankind has been doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And we're building slavery. We're building the next slave society, the next Egypt, right? The next Goshen, right? Right? We're all going to be part of this new slavery system if we don't destroy the surveillance state, if we don't destroy the national security state. And we're going to need God to help us, just like how God helped the Jews when they exited Egypt. All right. There's going to be a great exodus out of the surveillance state. So just be careful on this. That Israel isn't all lily white. It's not. It's not. I never said it was. But I do know this. The Temple Mount is getting rebuilt, and there's going to be the machinery and the sacrifices is all going to be rebooted.
Ben Netanyahu there saying the country will take responsibility over the Gaza Strip after destroying Hamas. What exactly does he mean?
This is the most interesting development we've had in days as far as the political side of this debate goes. And it's the first time we've heard any sort of mention from Netanyahu about a plan the day after the war, that is, because there's been a lot of criticism as to Netanyahu's response, sending in these forces now in full force, but without a plan for what's going to happen afterwards. The Palestinian Authority, which is in a very weak position right now, has been suggested by US Secretary of State Blinken to be revitalized, and to take over control of the Gaza Strip. There are a lot of doubts about whether or not he can do that. The other suggestion has been a group of countries and international agencies to provide governance and security for the Gaza Strip. But as you heard there, it sounds like Benjamin Netanyahu wants to do that.
That is DW's Ben Fazulin reporting from Jerusalem. Many thanks, Ben. I'd like to now welcome Frank Ledwidge, a senior lecturer in strategic studies at Portsmouth University and a former UK military intelligence officer. Frank, Israeli troops have encircled Gaza City and are preparing to push into the city center. Do we have any idea how many Hamas fighters they're expecting to confront there?
Well, good morning, Michael. I think we don't have an idea of that, but I'm absolutely certain that there is probably a fairly accurate assessment on the part of the intelligence officers of the 36th Division of the Israeli Army, the most powerful armoured unit they have, who are about to enter. So I can't really speculate on that. The overall context is that there are 20 or 30,000 within Gaza, the enclave itself, but there's no way of telling how many in Gaza City. I would suspect there are going to be a fairly high number, as they will want to make a stand. The Israeli projection is that this particular phase of the operation for Gaza City will take months, not weeks.
It is, in fact, existential for Hamas, so I take your point. Israel's made it repeatedly clear their goal is the destruction of Hamas, in particular, its leadership and their headquarters in Gaza City. Does the IDF believe Hamas leaders are, in fact, still there?
They say that they have, over the last 4 weeks or so, probably the last 2 weeks really, killed in the region of 30 senior commanders. That's brigade commanders. That's commanders of about 300 or 400, and battalion commanders 100 or so. The numbers are different from Western armies, which would indicate that they do believe that some of the leadership is there. Now, one of the functions of cordoning off the northern Gaza area into the northern sector of operations is to seal off Hamas leadership and, of course, personnel who are already there, and kill them, capture them, I suppose, in some cases. And I've no doubt at all that the assumption is that there is significant elements of Hamas leadership there. Of course, the overall leadership is in Qatar, although there are operational commanders, for example, who are still certainly in Gaza.
The Israeli army is advancing into the city with the 36th Division. We understand some of the best trained personnel in the IDF. What more can you tell us about this division?
It's one of the older units in the Israeli army. It's what the Americans would call a story unit, with battle honors going way back into the 50s and late 40s, I think. But I think it's important to bear one thing in mind, or many things really, but one thing particularly is the power of this unit. So to put things in context, it has combat power comparable, combat power, not numbers here, so the numbers probably between 10 and 20,000, plus support and logistics. But the combat power is similar to that of the British Army. So that one division, 8 or 9 reserve and regular divisions in the Israeli army, divided into brigades. But the 36th Division has combat power equivalent to the British Army. So when you see those pictures of these awe-inspiring, shock and awe barrages, not only from the air and artillery. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing the power of a large, modern, well-equipped army, and its most powerful division about to go.
I don't think it's going to turn too well for Hamas. I really don't. But it's going to take time to root it out. But the bottom line is this. The Palestinians allowed Hamas to dig in. They didn't fight for their country. And then now we have all these bleeding heart liberals telling us that Israel is the bad guys.
And its most powerful division about to go into action. Like I say, just to stress, by Western European standards, it's an extremely powerful unit, very well equipped.
Frank, I'm curious, if the Israeli army succeeds in taking over Gaza City, what does it mean for the progress of this war? Is it essentially over? Or
why say if? It's when. If they start having problems and being able to control Gaza City, they're going to continually level it until they do have control.
Is it essentially over? Or will they face something like what the American forces confronted after toppling Baghdad? A smattering but persistent resistance of guerrilla forces hiding among the local population?
I have no doubt whatsoever that they will. And this fed into the decision by Netanyahu, I think, over the last day, or expressed over the last day, for Israel to take control of this, because there's no appetite whatsoever on the part of the Arab countries who talk a great game but do very little with respect to security in that particular region, and even less, I think, with the British, the French, and the Americans, who I think have had quite enough of occupying hostile areas in the Middle East. So that essentially left only the Israelis. And of course, the Israelis will be facing, undoubtedly, as you put it, desultory guerrilla action when and if when they take this area. The question for me, and I don't know the answer to this, is what, as you said, what will they do then? Will they then start grinding south? Will they start incrementally going, of course, on the population and resources? We don't know the answer to that yet. But for now, the question is, how long will this take? The answer is this phase, months.
Reminds me of what former Secretary of State Colin Powell said. He said, you break it, you own it, when he was talking about Iraq, of course. That is Frank Ledwidge, Senior Lecturer in Strategic, and a former UK military intelligence officer. Many thanks, as always, Frank.
Thank you, Michael.
Let's now bring in Shayna Lowe.
We'll go back to Shayna, but Michael Moore is talking on Al Jazeera right now.
And I think President Biden, both when he was there and since he's come back to the United States, has essentially said, don't make the mistakes that we made, that we were very much in a rush toward revenge. We were very, I mean, everybody here, anybody who remembers that day, it was frightening. It was a sense of pretty much, I'm guessing how most Israelis have felt for many years. Something like this would never happen. And then it happens. And the fact that it took hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours before help arrived.
First of all, this guy drives me fucking nuts. One, he's an ultra fucking liberal. Two, he's a glutton. And three, he's got an RBG doll in the background. And that's the justice that died. That's the ultra liberal. I can't take it anymore. These people are fucking crazy. Ultra liberals are what brought us to this point. Kill the enemy. Kill the enemy. Kill the enemy. The enemy, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran.
He has discombobulated a lot of people in a sense of kind of utter horror and fear. Human beings do not act well when they come from a place of fear and terror. That's why a lot of times terrorism does its job. But I want to say that waking up that morning, that Saturday morning on October 7th, it's never a good day on this planet when you wake up and you hear that 1,400 of our Jewish brothers and sisters have been slaughtered. It's none of us.
God is pissed, and he's pissed at the Israelis, and he's pissed at the non-Israelis, the world at large. There is an ultra-liberalism that has taken hold that is antithetical to the precepts of the Bible. And now it's time to kick ass.
Live in that world. And so I think I understand all the initial responses, and I understand the response and the desire for revenge, having gone through that time and seeing all the mistakes we made, as you said, by first invading Afghanistan, then invading Iraq. For what?
That's an interesting question. The for what? The what was this really about question in regards to 9/11 led people to say, okay, this was maybe just a pretext, for invading Iraq. Do you worry that the Israeli government may similarly use October 7th as a pretext to take over more of Gaza, to expand in the West Bank, or maybe go to war with Iran? Could this moment of horror
this right here is totally emblematic, and it explains perfectly what I'm saying. The people that are seeing this are looking at this as a human construct, that these are human events. I'm telling you, this is a divine thing that's happening here. And that you're going to see that the Jews, as they advance through this, as long as they do full war, will be victorious. And it's not because of the prowess of the Israeli military. It's because God is with them. There is the desire by God, for whatever reason, I don't know why, no one knows why, the desire to have that temple rebooted. And anyone that keeps on thinking that this is based on a human construct, this event that's happening right now, we've gotten to this point because of human construct. But going forward, the punishment and the blessings that are happening are because of the will of God. And until the Christians and until the Jews start to realize this, there's going to be more strife and more violence in the world because of this ultra-liberalism. Because again, it's antithetical to the Torah and the Bible precepts. People like Moore are the reason why we're at war.
In fear turn into an opportunistic moment for something else?
Well, I think it already has. And let me just say this, and this is what maybe one issue that most people on the right or the left, pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian, pro-human life, and I think, I'm guessing just the polls I've seen just out of Israel, Netanyahu has to go. The people were not protected. What was he doing? Why had they pulled the army back? Why? We know one reason they were pulled back into the West Bank was to support the settlers and their violence against the Palestinians. I mean, he's going to have to answer for this. It's not going to go
you'll never see a liberal ever realize that the Temple Mount is getting rebooted. Israel's borders are going back to biblical borders. And it's a much bigger issue than just Gaza Strip, because that means taking land away from Egypt that should have never been negotiated away after the wars. taking a land away from Lebanon, taking land away from Syria, taking land away from Jordan.
And I think that it's very hard to trust things that are coming out of his administration. And the slaughter that we're witnessing now is so, I don't know how to put words to it, frankly. I mean,
it's not an Israeli slaughter. It's God slaughtering the people that are preventing the temple from being built. God doesn't give a damn about humans in general. There's certain things, because let me rephrase that. God doesn't care about humans and their opinion about what God wants. God doesn't care. There's certain things that God wants. And if mankind prevents it, God will come down and in various ways, and force the issue. And the thing is that the slaughter that's going on in Gaza is because the Palestinians allowed for terrorism to take hold, Hamas to take hold. Hamas wants to eliminate Israel. Well, by eliminating Israel, you'll never have the temple rebuilt. So it's very simple. It's very simple. It's not Israel doing the slaughtering, Michael. It's God. I mean, just read in the Torah or the Bible, what was going on in Numbers, or even, the summary, in Deuteronomy of how Moses kept on complaining to the Jews that if you don't do what God's telling you to do, that one, the Jewish people are going to be cursed, and two, it will get worse. There were many times in the Torah and in the Bible where the Jews didn't go full out, even though God told them to. And they were cursed. The Jews were cursed because of it. They didn't follow God's commandment. God told them to do something. And I'm telling you, this is all about the Temple Mount. It's not about some bullshit strip along the Mediterranean. And these people don't get it. They'll never fucking understand this. Why? Because he's a fucking glutton. Why? Because he supports a crazy judge that's dead.
Happened the last few nights, but really what's happened the last few decades. And that I, as an American, I'm helping to fund that. The United States is the bank.
Let me ask you about that funding, Michael.
At a metaphysical level, he's right that we have been complicit in this. That's why I said everyone is at fault. Everyone. The one that's watching this video, you're at fault. I'm at fault. Everyone's at fault. But the ones that see what's going on and prepare and repent and try to do the right things to allow for a peaceful existence in the world, starting with the foundation of rebooting the temple, are going to fare a lot better than the ones that are like him. Now, maybe he'll wake up, lose some fucking weight, and repent. But the reality of the situation here is that you got ultra liberals that will not realize that the Temple Mount is being rebooted, and the Jewish people and Israel have to be in existence to allow that to happen. You have you have had the Dome of the Rock Mosque, right? On the Temple Mount since, I don't know, I could be wrong on the date, but like the 1300s or something like that. The 1200s, I don't know. Yeah, 1300s, I think it was, maybe 1200s. How much peace in the world have we had? Not much.
So important, right? Because on the one hand, as you mentioned earlier, President Biden says, hey, Israel, don't make the mistakes we made. We went looking for justice and we made mistakes. At the same time, he's asking for more military aid. He said that
intellectualizing this, trying to use some sort of UN international resolution concepts isn't going to work in this case. There's an ushering in of the Messianic era, and we are part of the generation that is the stepping stone for that. We are going to be the warring generation to allow for peace and prosperity for future generations to happen, because we fucked the world up so badly. And more is part of the problem. Half war is going to make it worse.
Since being killed is just the price of waging a war. You can't square that circle easily. What do you do? What should the U.S. be doing?
Well, we should not be trying to increase the slaughter. We should not be funding the war. I think most Americans have.
The United States has been given a blessing for a long time. We've screwed things up. Just look at our people. Half of our people are a bunch of dipshits. Maybe more than half. All right? Are a bunch of dipshits. They don't even deserve to live. They're just a bunch of dipshits. The United States is at a fork in the road. Support Israel and you'll be blessed. If you don't support Israel, you're not going to be blessed. And you know what? The United States is in the decline. We are the yoke of a new era. We are the yoke of a new era. That means that we are going to be the energy source for the new era in the Middle East. The new century isn't going to be China. It's going to be the Middle East. And as that's happening, the United States is going to slowly start to decline. Just like how the United States was, the era of the United States coincided with the decline of the British Empire. We are the yoke for Israel. There's an organism. This is the reason why you listen to Dr. Paul Cottrell. There is an organism that is developing in the womb during these tumultuous times, and that organism is Israel. All right, this Messianic era. And it needs an energy source in its early development. And that energy source is the yoke. And that yoke is from the United States. If we cut off the yoke before, this organism fully develops, we're going to be cursed. It's the ultra liberal needs to get it in their head that they are at fault for the massive curse that's coming down.
No problem with making sure that there are no more Israelis killed and providing for the defense, but that's really not what's going on right now. How do you justify the slaughter of children? And some of these nights, half of the dead, half of the wounded are children. What are we getting back? What are we trying to do? What?
RGB, not RGB, red, green, blue, RBG, RBG, all right? Ginsburg, right? Judge Ginsburg is the little doll in the back, right? She was part of the problem. Jewish liberal. Like I said, Jewish liberals are part of the problem. Jewish liberal that led to slowly erosion of the family unit, which leads to 60 million kids, 60 million fetuses, 60 million babies killed in the womb because America wanted abortion rights. And he's whining about kids that are being killed in the time of war. What about the 60 million babies that were killed because of policies from RBG? Michael Moore, huh? See, this is another classic example on how the ultra liberal keeps on eating its tail. I mean, I can't make this up. RBG, Ruth Ginsburg, doll in the background with Michael Moore, the ultra fucking liberal, telling me and the world at large that we got to worry about the children in Palestine. What about all the black children that were aborted? Michael Moore.
The children do, and how are we defending Israel? By having more dead children. And anybody who can't say right now, you know, especially people who say, oh, I support Israel and I will, you know, defend Israel, and then support and fund the massacre of innocent civilians and children, you have no credibility then when you say that you support Israel.
Well, that kind of hypocrisy, that kind of contradiction.
You don't have any credibility when you support abortion rights. Killing of children in the womb rights. You don't have any credibility, Michael Moore. I'm telling you, it's about the Temple Mount. God wants it rebuilt. God's tired of the ultra-liberal because he's tired of the family unit being destroyed. And this ultra-liberal problem is also within the Jewish community. And in a lot of ways, maybe the ultra-liberal movement started in the Jewish community. Maybe.
It isn't just with people, it's with governments too, including our government. I mean, Human Rights Watch put it perfectly. They said the hypocrisy and double standards of Western states are flagrant and obvious. And that, of course, the U.S. and other Western governments have to apply the same principles regarding Russian atrocities in Ukraine as they would with, quote, Israel's brutal disregard for civilian life in Gaza. It seems like we pick and choose when we're going to be outraged, when we're going to intervene.
Dropping millions of leaflets, calling millions of times with recorded messages, calling individual people tens of thousands of times to get the hell out of the way because they're going to blow up their building, isn't this disregard for civilian lives. I mean, that's bullshit. Of course, it's on Al Jazeera pushing RBG and pushing an ultra-liberal agenda. And then over his right shoulder is Texas.
We're going to have a moral critique. Would it be fair to say that the U.S. foreign policy position is fundamentally hypocritical?
It is, but I think what's really at the core always of our foreign policy is what's best for us. And so Israel, and from the very beginning of the creation of Israel, the American government and the American military has always seen this as a good thing for us.
Well, that's true. In the contemporary time, it was all about oil and making sure that we had an ally in that region. All right. And it has a lot to do with UK in British Petroleum. All right. I'll grant them that. But Israel wasn't created by man. Israel was a covenant between a group of people that accepted the Torah and God. And those boundaries and that covenant has never ceased since the actual giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. So we're talking thousands of years, even with Jews going into the diaspora when Rome destroyed Jerusalem. There were a few Jews that stayed in Israel. There's never been a time since Joshua going over the river and into the promised land. There's never been a time where Jews were never in Israel. Those are the fucking facts.
That we have this base there, that we have all the kind of intelligence apparatus and everything, all the things that Israel does basically to make sure that the oil supply is there in the Middle East. We're not going to be impeded by this. And I think too, and I've had Israeli friends say to me, we get that what's really behind this, either politically or militarily wise.
I agree with him on this. Contemporary history, the last 100 years, 70 years, right? I would agree that it is heavily related to oil and oil interests, right? But again, the United States is the yolk for the organism to develop, and where the Middle East becomes the center of economic commerce, because there's going to be a flow of energy during the rebooting of the temple, and that there are going to be a lot of people that will want to move there, just like how a lot of people wanted to move to the United States when the United States was booming, right? There's a bigger thing, Michael Moore, that's happening. God's hand is in this. And here's where he's proving my point about the United States being tested. God is testing the United States. If you support Israel, you will be part of the blessing. If you don't support Israel and you only focus on your own interests, then you will be cursed.
Israel in that way for many, many years.
Another thing that comes to mind, though, is the role that the media plays. Again, I think back to your work. In 9/11, the media helped beat the drum for war. Post 9/11, they beat the drum for war in Iraq. They beat the drum for war in Afghanistan. They continue to beat those war drums. Similarly, today we see the media adopting pro-Israel approach, pro-war approach, not as uniformly as post 9/11. There are voices urging caution. There's social media, which is far more complicated and diverse and sometimes messy. But at least we see more dissent than we did 20 years ago. Has the media learned a lesson? Have we learned a lesson from before?
I think so. I think because of the what's still.
I think we've learned a lesson in terms of the cost of war, the dollars. We're running out of money. Our bond market is terrible. We have problems with inflation. We've been in the Middle East under a false pretext for 20 some odd years. But the problem with what we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan is different than what is going on here. Keep that in mind. It's different. There's a difference between human wars and godly wars, holy wars. All right? And I'm telling you, quote, holy wars, right? If they aren't executed properly, based on the divine, then there's going to be massive curse. Now, you'll have the other side that is against Israel saying, well, how do you know what the divine wants? It is very clear the temple is getting rebuilt. Israel is going back to its original borders. And it's going to be bloody. And that we as a society let all these things that destroy the family unit desecrate the name of God. And then we wonder why we have so many problems in the world. Ultra-liberalism, RBG, and all the offshoots, including ultra-liberal Jews, are the problem.
I'm back and forth about the hospital that was bombed. Was it an Israeli rocket? Was it a Palestinian rocket? That'll all come out, by the way. We will all know the truth of everything.
Yeah.
I'm confident of that. But in the meantime, the New York Times and the others have had this sort of
what he's talking about is that first rocket that hit that parking lot next to the hospital. All right, this is being recorded on November 7th. This Al Jazeera Live. All right, this is November 7th. That incident took place, I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, right? And it was proven that the rocket that was shot from Gaza by Hamas or Islamic Jihad misfired, partially blew up in the air, and fell down on a bunch of cars and started burning them up. And there weren't that many people that died from it. But meanwhile, the health ministry of Gaza, the Palestinian health ministry, said it's 500 people. And everyone in the media, even myself, thought that was the number. It was 50 or less. The Palestinians are a bunch of bullshit. You know why? Because they're overtaken by Hamas. You know why? Because they didn't fight and prevent them from them entrenching in Gaza. Now, is it possible that the Israeli intelligence spawned Hamas? Maybe. But the Palestinians should have fought it.
Back away from, we got to make sure we're not, we have to say every time anything that comes out of Gaza now from the Palestinians, we have to say, oh, this has not been independently confirmed. And we should all know that anyways as consumers of media. But I still don't hear anybody in the media, whenever something comes out of Netanyahu's mouth, whatever his government is saying, it should also be have the caveat attached to it. We have not been able to independently confirm what Benjamin Netanyahu was saying. And so we're in the fog of all this right now. We don't know a lot.
Many organizations are saying that. BBC saying that. Al Jazeera saying that. France 24 saying that. So, I would say there's more people saying, questioning both sides. But the thing is that Ishmael and Esau are a bunch of fucking animals.
Everything that he and his government, very right-wing government, has been saying and doing must be treated with a lot of skepticism.
Absolutely. And it's a right-wing government. And so sometimes with right-wing governments, right-wing media outlets are very gentle. The thing about this case is that it's not just the right-wing media that's not being sufficiently critical. It's everybody. I mean, look at supposedly centrist mainstream media outlets like CNN. I mean, they're still branding their TV coverage Israel at war, which seems to be taking sides. It doesn't feel very neutral to me. A BBC headline about an Israeli attack on Jabalia mentioned the massive crater the strike left, but they ignored the more than 50 people that the Gazan health ministry says were also killed. But mainstream media makes all kinds of dubious decisions about how to frame a conflict. And you know very well as a filmmaker that the way you frame a story is how people understand the story. How have people's perceptions been influenced by the way the media has framed this?
Well, I think very much so. But again, The majority of Americans don't support the slaughter.
Yeah.
And they want the humanitarian aid in now, not 20 trucks a day or 50 trucks a day, 500 trucks a day. That is where the American people are at. And I want people around the world who might be listening to this to understand that my fellow Americans actually kind of do get this. And when the big graphics come on the screen, Israel at war, you know, you just have to stop and think for a second. Oh, yeah, the Palestinians, they have all those fighter jets. They have all those bombers. They, the big Palestinian Navy with all those.
Right.
When you say the word war, what does define war? It's there was an attack on October 7th that was reprehensible, and so people have a right to defend themselves, but that's not what's going on now. If you're killing children in my name with my money, that's not a war to defend yourself. That looks like something else. That looks like that there's a group of people.
Where is your heart, Michael Moore? On Hamas digging tunnels underneath the civilian population and this entanglement that they created. Oh, by the way, the Indonesian hospital in Gaza, funded by NGOs, was built right on top of a tunnel system that was pre-existing to hide it. Oh. You got to do the entanglement. Investigation, Michael Moore. You got to understand this entanglement that Hamas has done within the population, and Israel's trying to untangle that. Israel has a huge military operation and difficulty to do what they're trying to do. They'll get it done. It's not because of their military prowess. It's because God is with them. And Michael Moore is never going to understand this. I mean, he doesn't have the discipline to stop eating. And then he's going to tell, and he doesn't have the discipline and the moral fiber to understand that killing 60 million children because of abortion rights is worse than what's going on in Gaza. And then he doesn't talk about the wider world, the wider conflict that's going on. Iran is a rogue actor. And this could go unconventional, especially over time. Barriers of entry for biologics and chemicals is low. And Iran already has nuclear capability.
2 to 2.5 million people of color that are being pushed, as they say, into the sea or into the desert, or to get rid of them in some way. Certainly is what it looks like. And you can't wake up every morning and see the bodies of these dead children being pulled from the rubble.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what Netanyahu was doing was very similar to what Bush was doing. He messed up. Bush paid no attention. They knew an attack was going to happen. They didn't prepare for it. And now then Bush tried to save himself by, let's go to war. Let's defend America. And yet we're not any safer now as Americans than we were back then. And yes, there hasn't been another quote 9/11 here in the U.S., but none of us are safe if our response is more killing and more death.
Well, look, I'm looking at Biden's request from Congress for more money. It seems like more killing and more death is it?
The birth of the child, the birth of the Messianic era, will have labor pains. And, we are seeing that foundation being built of all these things that are happening. There was an inside job at 9/11. There probably was an inside job for October 7th. But the thing is that God allowed it to happen. He could have prevented the inside job from happening. So even though there was an evil aspect to what was going on within the military intelligence, someone turned off the switch or someone decided not to pay attention to a certain type of intelligence or whatever. So they're complicit, but there is a larger thing that's going on here, and that is the ushering in of a new age, and it's not an age of humanism. It's not an age of Aristotle. It's not an age of the philosophers and of the policy wonks of international affairs. There's a biblical thing that's going on, and when the Temple Mount is rebooted, there's going to be blessing on the world, and there's going to be an imparting of extreme knowledge in the sciences that will eclipse anything that we have today. And we don't know how many of those children, if they didn't die, how many of those children would not have been terrorists. Maybe one. Let's just use a mind experiment. Let's say 1 out of every 10,000 becomes so radicalized but intelligent to be able to construct biologics. And their biologics as a means of a weapon, as an unconventional weapon, ends up killing millions of people. Was it worth killing 10,000 children to save 1 million? This is a philosophical thought here. It's utilitarianism versus egoism. If that region doesn't reach homeostasis, if that region doesn't reach some sort of equilibrium, there's going to be terrorists that have unconventional means that will kill millions.
Biden's asked Congress for $14 billion for Israel's defense. The U.S. already provides Israel more than $3 billion a year. He's also asked for more money for Ukraine, on top of the tens of billions of dollars that's already being spent in the fight against Russia. Now, what's interesting to me is when Biden made the case for this spending, he did more than just make a moral argument. He did more than just make a political argument. He made an economic argument. On October 19th, he talked about the number of U.S. states that those weapons would be made in, as if to say, this isn't just good for defense, this is a jobs program. What do you think of the argument that making more weapons is also good for the average working American?
We don't fall for that anymore. The majority of people don't fall for that. And I got to tell you, Biden, the things that he said in the sort of position he's taken, I'm pretty sure what he's doing privately behind the scenes with Netanyahu. And I know they tried to slow things down a bit to try to get humanitarian aid in, to try and get hostages released. And I would say, I just want to say to people in Gaza, anybody who's holding hostages, release them. Release them now. It's not just in terms of the goodwill that will come from that, but do it because it's just right. It's the right thing to do. And know, again, as the Israeli press has informed us, when they started to release the first 4 hostages a week or so ago, and I think I heard one spokesperson for the IDF say, this is all just PR, them releasing hostages. Wow, what's that thing we learned when we were kids? That when you accuse me of something, it's quite a sign. It may be what you're doing too. And it's.
Oh, really, Michael Moore? See, here's another example where God gives you a little insight on how the ultra liberal is going to eat its tail. He's telling the Israelis that they're baby killers. Well, maybe the person that's saying it is a baby killer, especially when you support RBG. Going to the toy store and buying RGB. I can't deal with them anymore. These ultra liberals, why can't we just put them in a boat and just send them away to Atlantis?
Release the hostages, pull the rug out from underneath the Netanyahu government that's trying to justify the massacre of children. I would just strongly encourage that. And
yeah, let's not say anything about the 60 million children that have been aborted, a lot of them black.
Both sides have to have a ceasefire. The killing has to stop.
There was a moment last week that I got to be honest with you, still is sitting in my craw.
I would like to know. I would like to know if this anchor is promoting reparations.
The press secretary was asked if President Biden thinks anti-Israel protesters are extremists. Rather than answer the question, she called the protesters anti-Semitic and compared them to neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville back in 2017. There's an obvious divide on the left between supporters of Israel and supporters of Palestinians. But this is a Democratic White House calling critics of Israeli policy, who on most other issues are probably the allies, anti-Semites. What do you say to the people like the press secretary who make those kinds of claims?
My podcast team, my producers, went down to Grand Central Station in New York City on Friday night at rush hour because we'd heard rumors that people was going to be like a flash mob or people were going to show up there during rush hour to kind of shut Grand Central down. And when we got there, what it was an organization called Jewish Voice for Peace. And packed inside of Grand Central were well over 1,000, mostly New York Jews, sitting down and expecting to be arrested in an act of civil disobedience, wearing T-shirts saying, ceasefire now, not in my name. Yeah. New people had family members who had been killed on October 7th that wanted to make it clear that their deceased loved one would not want children being killed.
Where were the Black Lives Matter during the Black Lives Matter protests? Where were the blacks that said "not in my name" as they were burning down the towns?
Because they were killed.
Yeah.
It was and so the call, I saw that so I said, so basically you're calling these thousands of Jews in New York City anti-Semites? I mean, really, you're really working the PR machine hard when you're calling fellow Jews awful terms like that. So it's it's not going to work. And I think this is very frustrating for Israel, the Israeli government. That we've had a couple of generations of.
It's a classic example. What happened at Grand Central, and I have a video about it. It's the liberal eating its tail. It's eating itself. It's the ultra liberal Jew is a big part of the problem, and that's part of the reason why God's cursing Israel and cursing the Jews is because of the ultra liberal Jew. And the ultra-liberal Jew doesn't understand that the ultra-liberal non-Jew in the United States is going to eat you, just like the ultra-liberal Christian doesn't realize that this Hamas, BLM, anti-America mentality, anti-family mentality that's in the ultra-liberal core of their beliefs are going to eat you. They are going to go after you. The ultra-liberal is aligning with evil. And we are all being judged on this. I am not wrong. I am not wrong on this. This is another example.
Not just in the US, but in Israel and in Palestine and around the world, where they kind of get what's going on now. And so you're just not going to be able to make stuff up. And I'm very disappointed in President Biden for using this language. But I got to say, in the back of my head, and I have nothing to back this up on, I just think that publicly, Biden has taken this position that, we're 1,000% behind Israel and we're going to send as many weapons as possible and this and that, whatever. But I think behind the scenes and in his phone calls with Netanyahu and just reading some of the analysis of all this. Really,
there's certainly been some leaks. There have been some policy experts who've weighed in on this and said absolutely that it's not nearly as uniform a position in the United States and Israel as it looks publicly. But there's something.
And publicly, Biden doesn't like Netanyahu. He's made that
right.
I was in New York.
He's proven my point. God is testing America and the administration. God's doing tests at the social level, at the administrative level, at the individual levels, at the countrywide levels, right? At different levels. God's testing the Democratic Party and the Biden administration. Are you going to be on the side of Israel, or are you going to pick short-term thinking for a power grab? And if you pick the wrong side, you're going to get cursed. And most likely the Democratic Party will pick the wrong side. And what's going to happen is that it's going to usher in conservatism. It's going to usher in Trump. And it's going to usher in a stronger family. We need a stronger family unit in the United States and in Europe. There is not a civilization that has survived long term that has had a destruction of the family unit, the promotion of death through abortions, the promotion of, this gender fluidity stuff. Strong family unit and core principles that are precepts to the Bible is what's going to make a society strong and vibrant and have a strong work ethic. The ultra-liberals don't have a strong work ethic. The ultra-liberals are crazy. The ultra-liberals kill children in the womb.
I don't know, 6-7 weeks ago for the UN, the annual UN meetings, and Netanyahu was upset that he did not get an invitation like Zelensky and others did when they were in the US. Hey, come on down to DC, come to the White House, all that. Biden didn't want anything. They had a perfunctory little 2 chairs there at the UN, and they sat side by side for a minute, he and Netanyahu, and that was it. It was not welcome at the White House. I was a supporter of Bernie Sanders, but I voted for Biden, and I have been one time, many times over.
I'm going to go to a commercial for PNN. There's a lot of pathogens out there, like Michael Moore, that need to be neutralized. To neutralize pathogens, please get silver gel. What you do is you put it on your hands, put it around your mouth, around your nose, lightly coat in your nostrils, around your ear, lightly coat your eardrum, lightly coat around your eyes. Close your eyes and lightly coat them. And what will happen is it will stay active for about 5 hours, and it will neutralize pathogens. It will reduce your chances of getting a cold. In addition, what you do is you take Max 35 or Max 14, take a teaspoon of it a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle it, swallow it, and what you'll do is that you'll neutralize pathogens in your upper oral cavity and down your esophagus, and that's going to also help to maintain a good mucosal barrier. By doing that, you're reducing your chances of getting colds and contracting things that happen to just be released out there, like the last crisis. Also, I have structural nanosilver lozenges. I have them in sweet menthol and green apple 20 count. I also have blueberry and honey lemon in drop form that's in 100 count. So please go to my store, get the lozenges and the drops, especially for the cold season. We're still in the cold season until March. So this will help to neutralize pathogens and soothe that irritated throat. It's a great product. Back to our regular programming on Al Jazeera.
Very kind of surprised and happy with the things that Biden has done since he's been president to help the people, to help the poor, to stand with unions. I've never seen a president go to a union march or demonstration to support the union against the automakers. So I think that we'll know more in the months or years to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you speak to that because it makes me think about the future or the potential future of the left. Before you go, I just want to ask you this. You were an avatar of progressive politics long.
The future of the liberal. Once we get through this crisis, once the separation of the ultra liberal and the conservative happens, and the blessings and the curses come down from above, I think that the ultra liberal constituency is going to shrink.
People knew who Bernie Sanders was or who an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was. Now there are podcasts about the end of neoliberalism, and more people are joining DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, than ever before. Unions are experiencing their highest levels of public support in decades. To your point, Bernie almost got the Democratic nomination for president as a self-identified socialist. I mean, there is a vocal contingent in Congress right now that identifies as progressive. We are in a different moment. Are you satisfied with the gains made by the left in this country?
Yes and no. I mean, the gains are not far enough. I mean, we saw during the pandemic, because of all of the federal support and help for people, poverty amongst children was cut in half. And I'm not the only one who thought at the time, well, why don't we just keep this going? Look what we've done just by providing help to those who need it. And, and then of course, because he's a more moderate, Biden has had this, he hasn't kept a lot of that aid going. But I think that young people get it. They're the ones behind the new union movement in this country. You've got over 300, 400 Starbucks have been organized and voted in the union. And of course, they're fighting that, and as they always do. But this is all young people doing this. And it is young people who are standing up for the Palestinian people, but also will stand up for it. They're focusing a lot on the few kind of crazy people that are bigots. A thing like this, Israel, what they've been doing, playing into the hands of bigots, and that's kind of white supremacist support. But that is not this country now, and the right wing will not run the show here. Again, I really believe in that. I don't believe Trump's going to get elected back into the White House. There are so many millions of Americans who
he doesn't think that Trump's going to get. Obviously, he is not on the same page as I am. Trump is getting reelected because Robert F. Kennedy, or is it Robert Yeah, it's Robert Kennedy Jr. He is now an independent. He's going to take votes away from the Democratic Party, just like how Ross Perot took votes away from the Republican Party. Trump's getting in. On top of it, there's an awful lot of people that really can't stand ultra-liberalism. And as you heard on Al Jazeera is promoting, Al Jazeera promotes Islam. All right? Islam is not a peaceful religion. Islam is not for the Christians, and Islam's not for the Jews. When they get more power and their caliphate gets stronger, they will go against almost every single policy that Michael Moore supports. Again, the snake is going to eat its tail. Trump's getting reelected. And then his head will explode. And when his head explodes, you're going to see shit all over that room, all over the RBG doll in the background, all over the map, because his head's full of shit.
The way that we've gone. And in closing, I just want to say thank you for all the people who stand for peace in Israel, especially. Thank you. And to all here in this country. I'm weirdly optimistic. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I just don't think Netanyahu and his gang are going to get away with this. And I think that the slaughter will end, and maybe not soon enough.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you for letting me speak. And it's I think this is the first television interview I've been asked to do since this started on October 7th. So my sincere grief and condolences to everyone who's died.
Well, that is Al Jazeera. Let's go back to DW.
Let's now bring in Shayna Lowe, a communication advisor with the Norwegian Refugee Council based in Jerusalem. Shayna, the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, says nowhere is safe in Gaza. Very few would know this better than your own team on the ground there. What are they telling you?
So we have a staff of 54 trapped inside of Gaza. Most of our staff has fled from the north to the center and south of Gaza. But as you said, no place is safe. Just this morning, I spoke to my colleague Yusuf, who's in Khan Yunis, who told me that there was an airstrike on a building very close to where he was sleeping around 6 a.m. this morning. Day after day, we are hearing from our colleagues that even those who have fled, that the south is not safe. We've had colleagues lose family members in the south, including one of our colleagues, Amal, whose 7-year-old son Khaled was killed in an airstrike on Rafah a couple of weeks ago. And what we're hearing in addition is not just is it not safe in the south, but similar to the north, people now are struggling to find basic necessities, food, clean water, even waiting in line 5-6 hours a day just to get half a portion of bread.
The Palestinian Red Crescent says that aid deliveries into Gaza are much lower now than before the war. I'm afraid it's a question we'll keep asking until there's significant change on the ground, but how dire is the humanitarian situation today?
Each day, it seems to be getting worse and worse. Just 2 days ago, I spoke to a couple of my colleagues who told me that they hadn't been able to find any water that day and were resorting to drinking cola because they had no alternatives. We are struggling even in our aid distribution that we're working on to find water and procure water. to distribute to those who have been internally displaced. Day after day, we're hearing that it's getting to be even more of a struggle to find these basic goods. And until there's a huge ramping up of the assistance going into Gaza, people in throughout all of Gaza are going to continue to suffer. The important thing also to note is while we need a huge increase in,
and on their subtitles, graveyard for children, UN chief, situation in Gaza is a crisis of humanity. Ultra-liberalism is against the precepts of the Bible and the Torah. If you're not going to follow the precepts of the Bible and the Torah, don't be surprised that there is a curse that comes from above through war and destruction. We're all at fault.
Need a huge increase in the amount of aid going in. I think we had 92 trucks yesterday, which still fell short of the 100 trucks minimum that the UN has said is needed in Gaza. Is we need fuel to be in order to be able to distribute that aid throughout all of Gaza and reaching the few 100,000 people who remain in northern Gaza. And we also need a ceasefire in order to assure that humanitarians can go and distribute that aid and people seeking assistance can...
Pause to help. Ceasefire, no. Why? Because Hamas is going to dig in more. And it's going to be harder for the Israelis. And the Israelis are going to take more casualties. In the war, by full destruction of Hamas, full destruction of Hezbollah, and Iran. Liberal.
Aid and people seeking assistance can go and access that aid safely and without concerns that they will be killed while seeking out aid.
Understood. Your organization is one of many asking for ceasefire. 1 month after the conflict started, what are your hopes?
You know,
I just want peace. I just want peace. I don't want to realize that actually the whole world is too fucking ultra liberal.
Day after day, but we need to keep pushing the international community to demand a ceasefire. Palestinians in Gaza cannot take it any longer. Each day, our colleagues tell us
this is a curse from above. There is retribution happening. Now, within that retribution, there is a blessing for ones that repent. And God doesn't give a damn what the UN thinks.
Each day, our colleagues tell us is the worst day of their lives, and the next day turns out to be harder than the previous one.
And it's going to get worse, honey.
Ceasefire cannot come soon enough. We need an end to this madness. We need an end to these hostilities. We need an end to the killing and displacement.
And that's only going to happen. That is only going to happen when you completely destroy Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, and the temple is rebooted.
Really, I cannot stress how much we are praying and hoping for a ceasefire, despite the fact that we're hearing resistance coming from Israeli authorities.
Our thanks to Shana Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council for your time and your perspective.
Thank you.
Well, the European Union says it is stepping up its delivery of aid to Gaza. So for more on this, let's bring in DW correspondent Rosie Burchard, who is standing by for us at an airport in Belgium, Ostend Bruges Airport, where a plane with aid is preparing to depart. Good morning to you, Rosie. Good to see you. So tell us, what aid is actually being sent?
Yeah, good morning from Ostend near the Belgian coast. And behind me, that plane is getting filled up with humanitarian aid. Mostly what I've been told is it's nutritional supplements, so food to get to people, and also health supplies, so medicines, equipment for hospitals, which we're told is really there's a dire need for it. Now that plane will be bound for Egypt, where it will be taken, the stocks will be taken by the Egyptian Red Crescent and then into Gaza. Now the EU says it has over the past month essentially quadrupled its humanitarian aid for Palestinians. And we've heard from the EU Commissioner this morning here at this airport saying that
the Red Crescent, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about with the Islamic community going against Judaism and Christianity. The Red Crescent. And you can't have the Red Cross. It has to be the Red Crescent. See, it seems very benign. When it comes to the caliphate and their peaceful religion, even though it comes from a bunch of animals from Ishmael and Esau, these people, they'll do something that seems very benign. And then once they get some power, then it gets worse. It's a Red Crescent. Not the Red Cross, the Red Crescent. See, it's very subtle. Very, very subtle. But this is more proof of the snake eating its tail. I'll tell you, I can probably in the next 10 days, there are probably going to be 100 examples of the snake eating its tail. And this very, very subtle hate within the Islamic community for Christians and Jews. Wake up. Wake up.
Morning here at this airport saying that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire. I asked him if he had a message for people there, and he said he wants to let them know that the EU has not forgotten about them and will stand by their side.
Right, well, getting aid shipped is naturally a good start, Rosie, but how effectively is this reaching people in Gaza?
Well, I spoke to a representative of the Red Cross here, and he summed it up really clearly. He said, well, no aid is any use if it's stuck in a truck. And so far, the figures that we've been given here this morning are that several hundred trucks of aid have been able to enter Gaza through that Rafah crossing over the past few weeks. But that was described to me by this humanitarian worker as simply a drop in the ocean. And we also had a persistent call, a renewed call from the EU's humanitarian aid chief saying there needs to be more humanitarian access. There is not enough. There's not enough ways for them to get aid in. So the fact that more aid is being sent, obviously the EU wants to
Red Crescent. The Red Crescent. To help support my news coverage, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and purchase Structural Nano Silver soaps. Neutralizes pathogens. It's a high-quality soap. I have many different versions of this, the different varieties. So please go to the store, take a look at it, get a few bars of this. This is a very high-quality Structural Nano Silver soap. So you don't smell like a crazy ultra-liberal. Part of my anti-aging protocol is taking C60. It is a very strong antioxidant. I take a teaspoon of this a day, and you just swallow it, right? And what will happen is that it will neutralize those reactive oxygen species in your cell that's causing cellular stress. When you neutralize them, the cell is healthier and you age slower. You'll boost up your mitochondrial health. You'll boost up your ATP. You'll have more energy. Take C60. It's a very strong antioxidant. And when you couple it with the other things that I do on my store for my anti-aging protocol, you'll see huge gains in improvement in your health and slowing down the aging process. This is in avocado and in coconut, in 2 ounce, 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce bottle. Please go to the store, get C60. It is the best antioxidant that you can get to help to improve your health. If you work out a lot and you need that recovery, take C60 before your workout and you'll recover quicker. Because when you're working out, you're creating a reactive oxygen species. All right, so it's important to actually have more antioxidants as part of your supplement routine when you work out heavily, like a weightlifter, a bodybuilder, or a marathon runner, triathlon runner, these extreme sports, right? But even when you're not an athlete, just using this as an anti-aging protocol is going to do huge benefits for you. Again, it brings down that reactive oxygen species. It's a very potent antioxidant. I take it every day, teaspoon. And what is interesting is that you'll notice that when you take the C60, right, and swallow it, wait a few minutes, and then you take the liquid structural nanosilver, like the Max 35, you'll notice that because you're neutralizing pathogens, right, and it brings down that inflammatory response, and the C60 is helping to bring down the reactive oxygen species, and by doing that, you're bringing down, stress in the cell and lowering the inflammation. What happens is that you'll notice that your lungs feel healthier. You can breathe deeper. It takes around 2 weeks for you to start noticing it. So that's an important feature, especially when we're bombarded with a bunch of crap in the air. Another product on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, is lignans. Take this every day. It helps with hormonal health for males and females, and it helps boost your immune system. With a proper immune system, you can attack those cells that are getting to the point where they have certain pathways that are turning cancerous. So lignans is a way to boost up your immune system, to be healthier, and to fight cancer. All right? Pay attention. Boosting up your immune system, reducing reactive oxygen species, neutralizing pathogens is a great way for you to improve your health and slow down aging. Take lignans. It's in a powder. You mix it in hummus, or you mix it in a smoothie, or you mix it in water, and take it every day. I take it with my probiotic. I take it in the afternoon. And it's for males and females. I have a great multivitamin in my store. It's easy to digest. You need multivitamins. Minerals and vitamins are cofactors for enzymes. So when you have those enzymes properly activated, you're going to have proper response in the cell. If you don't have the right concentrations, what's going to happen? It'll act subpar. So take this multivitamin as part of the anti-aging protocol, and you are going to fare a lot better, and you'll age slower. Back to the news.
Aid is being sent. Obviously, the EU wants to send that message of support, but also they say they're continuing to press, they say, all parties to try and get more access to, so that more aid can actually make it to those people in that dire need, as described here by EU officials.
Now, the United Nations has insisted on a ceasefire. Where does the European Union stand on that?
Well, the European Union is divided. You might have heard me say this on many other topics, but really on this one, EU countries have been battling over this, really negotiating down to every single detail of every single word. Officially, the EU, the European Council, so that's the member states, have called for humanitarian pauses and corridors for humanitarian needs. So essentially pauses in fighting to let aid in. Now, the commissioner here this morning, who represents the European Commission, so that's the executive arm of the European Union, said it doesn't matter which word you use, whether it's a pause, whether it's a corridor, whether it's a ceasefire. But of course, for a divided group of member states, words really do matter. And the EU is still pretty much at odds over this, even if they have managed to negotiate some statements so far. Now, they've also been
ceasefire means that it's days or longer. Pause is a couple hours. A corridor means a safe passage. All three of those are different. And all three of them have different levels of helping Hamas.
Now, they've also been what it was first described as a kind of muddled response. There was an announcement weeks ago, just in the direct aftermath of the attacks, there would be a suspension of certain development payments, and that was then backtracked on. So a somewhat muddled response so far, but certainly officials here this morning trying to send one message of support to, they say, the people in Gaza.
Thanks, Rosie. DW correspondent Rosie Burchard at Belgium's Ostend Bruges Airport.
I'm going to show you something that just showed up on Al Jazeera. And I'll tell you, with my medical background, I think that this picture is showing bullshit.
Yesterday morning to head to Jabalia, where you are now, in northern Gaza still. What was it like before you left Al-Shati, and why did you decide to leave?
Where is it?
Good evening. Just let me tell you that I think most of the Palestinians who lived in the beach camp escaped because Israeli airstrike targeted 400, maybe 40 houses, region. They targeted also their al-Balah, targeted.
This is another example of them lying.
The Israeli knows what they want. Unfortunately, the Israeli plan is to evacuate.
This is real. This right here part is real.
Happening right now.
Right, watch this. Watch this. Be very watch this very carefully. All right, you have to have a very discerning eye on this. Okay, lay this guy down, and that's a fit. These two guys are fucking total bullshit. These guys are total bullshit. These two people that are on the ground here, they aren't hurt. They are not hurt. These two are actors. I'll tell you, anyone that has medical training would watch seeing this, that you could just tell that these two people here are complete bullshit. A classic example of the fucking Palestinians being bullshit. Now, other people that are coming out of that ambulance looks real. So it's not everybody. But those two people on the ground are bullshit.
Told you before, we don't have fuel, we don't have bakeries, we don't have bread. We don't
this
have
right here is
water.
real. This part, this one's real. Now so look at all the blood and it looks perhaps it maybe some being crushed a little bit. And they just keep on re-looping it. See that? See how they're this guy, especially this one. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Total bullshit. So what they do is they're packing the ambulances in front of cameras. They're rolling it up to the hospital. The cameras are there at the hospital, and then the more that are packed, the worse it'll be, in the eyes of humanity, right? To demonize Israel. The one that was coming out of the back on the stretcher, real. These two clowns that were falling on the ground, they weren't real. They weren't. I'm telling you, they weren't real. They were not real.
Come back to
these two are bullshit.
That you mentioned in the evacuation route, and indeed the Israelis have been pushing people in the north to head south. But as we've heard from our
this one's real,
on the ground,
right here.
That is not a safe road for people to take. Do you think this is a trap that they're setting for Palestinians?
I mean, it's so obvious. Look at this. Watch this guy. Look at this. Just, it's like fucking Clownville.
Israel didn't recognize the UN resolution.
I'm telling you, the Palestinians and Hamas, they changed the wording of certain things to try to accentuate their their point of view. Sometimes it's very benign, like red crescent. And this is another incident. I'm probably the first one on YouTube to show this, to show you that these two people are fucking bullshit. All right. And if you don't believe me, ask any person that was that's gone through, ER or, training or, some sort of triage training, and they're going to say the same fucking thing. It's bullshit. Palestinians are bullshit.
Any of UN resolution, even 191, 242, 338, 282, 334, these are many UN resolutions asking or calling for Palestinian rights, but Israel, the whole world now can see what's happening. There were a genocide against Palestinians, women and children. Yesterday morning, my son is telling me I will write this week a book about what happened in Palestine. Everyone here, even the children, think of this, or are any human in any country of the world, even Somalia or any country of the world, thinks of this like Palestinians now? No. The Israelis now are committing.
So you just probably witnessed a first, right? Another first, right? Based on that feed from Al Jazeera. Please support my work by going to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and following my anti-aging protocol. Or you can just buy individual products like the Silver Gel. This is a great skincare product. It also helps to heal cuts, scrapes, minor burns, acne, and neutralize pathogens around your mouth, around your nose, around your ears, around your eyes, on your hands. Stays active for 5 hours, and it's in an easy dispenser, so it's really good to just keep it in your bag. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we have developed very high quality deodorants. These deodorants also detox. The reason why is because they're made from very, very high quality essential oils from the Himalayas. And not only that, there's a harmonic to the essential oil. All right. So you're not going to be able to get a better deodorant bar. So I have it in citrus, and the other scent is peppermint lavender. Get this deodorant bar, and it'll help to also detox. Use it every day. It'll help to detox your body, get your body healthier, and it's multi-purpose. Detox and use as a deodorant, so you don't smell like a crazy liberal. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a couple of those bars. Part of the anti-aging protocol is to reduce inflammation. Take turmeric. Also, if you work out a lot, you want to take higher doses of turmeric to recover quicker because of the sore muscles, and and that inflammation that takes place when you're working out, like you're running a marathon or whatever, right? But it's not just for people that are working out. You take this every day as part of a routine, and you'll slow down the aging process. Aging happens because we don't neutralize pathogens, we don't neutralize reactive oxygen species, and we're not controlling pro-inflammatory cytokines. This will help to bring down inflammation and reduce aging. Get your body healing and improve your immune system. Clarity factor. This helps to reduce and eliminate brain fog. Take this every day in the morning. I take it twice a day. I take it in the morning and in the mid-afternoon. This will help you to focus at work and focus at school. It's a great product, and it'll help maintain those dendritic connections because your brain is, your neurons are firing. So this is part of mental, like a mental care, right? You want those neurons to be healthy. Take Clarity Factor on a regular basis. Another product to control that inflammatory response is ashwagandha. This helps to control blood glucose levels. By doing that, you're bringing down that inflammation and you're going to heal your body. Oh, by the way, if you control your blood glucose levels, you're going to reduce cardiovascular disease too. Those are the many products that I have on my store. Please, again, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take a look at all the products. Get some of these products for the holidays. They're perfect for that, for getting someone towards taking care of their health, right? And if you do this on a regular basis, you're going to see these huge gains. Your immune system's going to get better. You're going to feel more energetic. You're going to get healthier. Thank you for supporting my work. Please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, BitChute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to those. Please help support my news coverage by donating on my website. On the homepage, it's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video. Go to the store. At the very bottom of the homepage, there is a link for Stripe or PayPal donations, and please donate. If you would prefer, you can also donate through Buy Me a Coffee or to help support my news coverage. Please be a paid subscriber to Patreon. That helps to support the news coverage. I provide all my videos for free. All right? I don't have a paywall. I don't hide information with people. Some people will do a little snippet and say, go to my Patreon so you can see the whole thing. No, I feel that if I am going to say something, it's probably really important for you to pay attention, to, you know, to protect your health, to protect your savings, or, you know, understand the crazy stuff that's going on in the world. All right. I have a very unique perspective, but I don't hide it behind a paywall like a lot of people. All right. I provide it for free. And that way people can get more informed. So please share my links. But for the ones that can, please support my work by donating, by subscribing to Patreon, and that keeps all the material for free for everybody. And please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, to support my work. Thank you for listening. Get the supplements. It's going to improve your health. Thank you for listening. Please share the work and have a nice day. And stay away from those crazy liberals like Michael Moore.